Welcome to the Co-Host Bros podcast, where we break down everything short-term rentals, entrepreneurship, and building a profitable hospitality business. Whether you're a host, investor, or property manager, we share real strategies, real insights, and real experiences to help you scale smarter and grow faster. Let's dive in.
What's the word, Mockingbird? Welcome to episode 106 of the best podcast dropping them tips. My name is Matt Codd, and I'm here with Austin Spitzenberger. We are the Co-Host Bros podcast. Today we have Steve Trover in the house. We're going to get some knowledge for you guys, so welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, Steve, super excited to have you on, man. I know we haven't had any guest that kind of does what you do in the space. But that kind of leads me to my first question is, for people that maybe don't know who Steve Trover is, I know you have an extensive background in the vacation rental space. So if you don't mind sharing, let us know a little bit about kind of what you've done in the space and maybe what it is you kind of do today. Give us a little rundown about you.
Absolutely, happy to do so. Started in the space about 30 years ago, end of 1996. Started a company here in the Orlando area where I'm still located today. And that was a vacation rental management company. My mom sold real estate here in the Central Florida market, starting back in the early 80s when we moved to Florida. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri originally. And just had a struggle trying to find a good management company for her buyers. And I had started a couple of businesses as a young guy. Thought, how hard can this short-term rental thing be? And 30 years later, I can tell you it's still hard. So launched that company, grew it from 0 to 400 properties under management over the course of 2 decades. Very slowly but surely, we made a decision early on only to take on properties that we sold through our real estate company. So we had a STR-focused company here in the Orlando market. Started to grow that and really wanted the best inventory. So we launched an interior design company my wife and I owned, and we furnished 500 vacation rentals over those 20 years, about 17 years of doing that. And, really started to grow into other markets, opened up in Captiva Island, Florida, about 3 hours southwest of here. Ended up with about 35 properties down there. Acquired a company in San Diego with 65 properties under management. And then opened up in Sun Valley, Idaho. And at peak had 100 employees across the different aspects of the business. Corporate headquarters were here in Orlando, but we had operations in the other 3 locations. The real estate company was 100% focused on STR sales and sold hundreds of millions of dollars worth of inventory. Worked closely with builders here in the local market, kind of the big box builders. Ultimately launching a company called Purpose Built in 2008, designed and spec'd high bedroom count, 7 to 14 bedroom, high spec homes here in the Orlando market, and then sold those to investors and just continued to roll that for many years. Going back in 2000, dating myself big time, decided to build a booking engine, kind of the first SaaS booking engine. That ultimately became a company called LiveRez, and that was a SaaS PMS that I was the chief strategy officer of for a long period of time until it was sold to private equity. And then I'm also have been very involved in the different trade associations, local, state, national, international. Went from kind of the VP of the local network here to VP of the state of Florida association, then went on to be VP and then president of the VRMA, going back about 15 years ago now. So I was on the board of the VRMA for 5 years. Also launched a nonprofit called Discover Vacation Homes, where we launched a television series called Getting Away Together on PBS to kind of promote the category. This is well before kind of even Airbnb, and really the popularity of STR was really grown to the degree that it is today. And still am involved in trade associations, both VRMA and VR Nation today. I'm heavily involved in the launch of VR Nation as a national association. So I've been helping in that regard. So Lots of different aspects of the industry. 10 years ago, sold a group of businesses and decided to kind of consult, figure out what I wanted to do next in the space or maybe even outside of the space, and did a bunch of consulting. Got asked to do some recruiting, general managers, that type of thing, first hires. Ultimately landed on deciding to start a company called Better Talent. And so Better Talent is a subscription-based talent acquisition company. We have a software platform, a hiring platform. We also do behavioral profiling, meaning personality testing, and we help over 500 companies in the industry do their hiring. Everything from C-level, if they were, scaled organization, to early stage 1 or 2 person company needs their first hire or virtual assistant. We do full-time, part-time, independent contractors and consultants. So that's kind of Better Talent today. I'm also still involved on the construction side and have a project out in Arizona that I'm consulting on, and then other projects in the works on the purpose-built side. So still involved in that as well. So that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, I don't even know where to go from here. That's so
All
much.
right, well, that's the show. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's so much. Like, you've done so much in the space. Like, and I feel like just hearing your resume is like makes me think. I got into this 5 or 6 years ago, and I think a lot of other people did too, with the emerging of like the OTAs and stuff like that. And it just makes me think like you're genuinely one of the true OGs of the vacation rental space, in my opinion. I mean, I don't think we've had anyone on our show. We've had a couple people like 20, 30 years, but I think that's in line with what you've done. So I'm sure you've seen, the industry change drastically compared to what it is today. Yeah.
One of the funniest things that had happened recently, I was at a conference and I got in an elevator and this lady goes, "Hey, how long have you been in the industry?" And I told her 30 years. She goes, "That's not possible. Airbnb's not even that old."
Oh man.
So
Yeah.
I had to explain to her that it's actually been done in the U.S. for about 80 years now. So yeah, it's not as new as we think. So
Yeah, it's almost like the game has changed from like traditional vacation rental management to where like Airbnb has just created its own household name for our industry. And now it's like, what is vacation rental management? Should you
right.
just say, I just manage Airbnbs? And it's just, in a
I'd
way, it
start by
sucks.
saying vacation rentals, and I give up and say Airbnbs because they obviously have created a
They
category
ruined it
now
for
in that respect.
everybody.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Man, that's interesting. One question I had off of that was just out of curiosity for our listeners that, you know, maybe they're scaling their vacation rental business. I'm curious to hear what your insight is on. It's kind of a loaded question, but I'd like to hear what your insight is on like being hyper focused and dominating one market versus doing what you did where you scaled over time, but you scaled in to 3 or 4 markets. Like, obviously there's pros and cons of each side, but I just hear the debate all the time. Like, oh, I have 150 listings hyper focused here, but then there's like seasonality if you spread out into different markets that, kind of help on your P&L. We're in 2 markets. So I'm curious what your opinion is on that overall and how that kind of worked out for you.
So one thing I didn't mention, I also do on a consulting side is I do M&A work and help companies prepare to sell their businesses. And so we look at that a lot. I also work with companies from, they have one location where they're the market dominant leader. And then I have companies where they have 20 locations, right? And, my view on whether or not you move to a secondary destination is, are you market dominant in the one you're in? At least in your part of that market. And what I mean by that is if you're a high end vacation, focused on the high end, are you dominant at the high end level in that market? Do you have market share and you've hit a growth ceiling because there's really not anything else to go and get in any significance? Then maybe it's a yes. But in most cases, it's a no, because I rarely find a company that is market dominant, especially early stage. And the idea, and I had the same idea years ago, right? I'm like, well, Captiva, people can want to come to Orlando for 6, 8 years, and then their kids get too old and they age out and they want to go to the beach. And so that was my premise, right? I wanted to follow my clients to wherever they wanted to go. I started asking them in a post-stay survey, where would you like to go? And they all said the beach. Southwest Florida was the most common. And so that was the data-driven decision to go to the beach, right? But even though we were market dominant to some degree in Orlando, it was impossible to be completely market dominant. There's 500 vacation rental companies, but we were the luxury leader. So I thought, hey, I'm just going to march into Captiva and this is going to be easy. It's not. You will not, nobody cares when you go into the next destination that you're the market leader in the other one. You're starting from zero. Maybe you have a little bit of up because you can, obviously refer clients and talk about your success and all of that. And you're certainly knowledgeable, but from a brand perspective in the market, it doesn't mean anything what you did in that other market. And so don't think you're just going to march in and it's going to be easy is one of my most common suggestions. The other thing is like, thinking that you're going to centralize a lot of things and therefore, save a lot of money in the next. There's some truth to that, but there's less truth to that than you think. You're going to have to do a lot of the things, especially early on in that market, and rebuild. And every market's a little different, And I was at a beach market in Florida, which was vastly different than the Orlando market. San Diego was infinitely different than both of those two markets. And then I go into a mountain market and it's completely different. So if you do decide you're market dominant in one and you're going to go to the next, you might want to think to go to one that's pretty analogous from a who's coming to that market perspective, the type of owners and investors that are in that market, so that you can use a lot of the knowledge and methodologies that you have had success with in that new market. But I rarely go into somebody's company and look at it and say, yeah, you should go into the new market. I usually say, no, double down here, make more money here first, until you're completely tapped out and have to go. So.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think you said it well, and I think what I've done in our business is we're in two markets, and one market we're at the level where I think we're very well established, well known. We come up organically when the conversation comes up. We're always top three. Like that in the Hill Country is where we're at is a fair deal. And then my partner owns in the Texas Gulf Coast, so we added one or two owned properties there. But so we were like, well, we're already starting to build it out. So we got to, I think we're at somewhere like 10-ish, 10, 11, 12, something like that there. But what I've realized is like that what works really well in our bread and butter market is from seeds that I planted 4 or 5 years ago that are kind of now coming to fruition. And that scale of building the business is actually working. And it is so much harder in that other market where we don't have a presence. There's a lot of legacy managers. It's a well established vacation market where I just feel like we're going uphill. And yes, we can grow there, but the ability to sign clients and market and grow there is a lot harder. And it feels like, to your point, it's just like I'm basically just starting over again. And it's like now we've got to build a new reputation. So that Lazy H Retreats brand in the Texas Hill Country doesn't really carry over there just because we're good here. Didn't work there. And it's like you're basically just starting a new business, is the way I see it.
And that's literally verbatim how I describe it. I just say, okay, but when you go in there, just know you're starting a new business from scratch. You know a lot more than you did when you started this one, but it's not going to be as easy as you think. So, yeah. And I rarely find anybody that just goes in and just knocks it out of the park. The next destination, it is a struggle. So, business is hard, especially this one.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, we could dive into each individual topic of everything you've done in this space, but we just don't have that would take us 24 hours to cover that stuff. So for the time span, like I definitely want to jump into like kind of if you can elaborate a little bit more on what it is you guys do today and tell us a little bit more about Better Talent and kind of what problems you guys solve for us operators, for anyone looking to make some hires, VAs, whatever the case may be. Just give me a little rundown on that. That'd be cool.
So just real quick on that, why Better Talent? Why did we go down that path? And I asked myself a question when I started consulting. I'd sold to companies. At that point, I think I'd started like a dozen companies. Now I've started 17. I asked myself a question: what was the hardest part of business? All of the different things that I've done, what was the hardest thing? And it wasn't technology development or product development, physical design of the homes. It wasn't even managing the homes, actually, the process. It was it was really the people, right? And it didn't matter what business it was, technology or construction or management or real estate sales or any of those other businesses. If I had the right people in the right seats, I could do anything and execute on the vision and we could succeed. Where I failed, it was usually because either I didn't see the right structure for the business from a people perspective, or I had people in the wrong seats and I left them there. And one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made was not only, hiring and retaining talent, was hiring and retaining the wrong person in the wrong role. And you're like, you know what? They're doing an okay job or whatever, and it is a problem, but you leave it there. So that was kind of the impetus for better talent. The other thing I noted was when I looked into the industry and said, okay, who's the market leader in whatever destination? I looked at all these market leading companies and like, what do they have in common? And sure enough, it wasn't the technology stack. It wasn't the properties they managed. It wasn't their brand. It was literally their people. And when they had a really cohesive team of people, they would be market dominant. That vision could be executed on. And so decided to dive in on that problem as a consultant early on, started doing personality testing 20 years ago in my businesses. Thought I knew what I was doing for the first 10, probably didn't know as well as I thought I did. For the first 3.5 years as a consultant, I traveled around the country training vacation rental management companies on using personality profiling. I traveled with an IO psychologist. I learned it forward and backwards. So we would co-train. We were doing really well with that. And then COVID hit and you couldn't travel anymore. And right about then is when I had decided to start Better Talent. I literally started BT April 2020, right when COVID was going into full force, right? Thought it was probably the worst possible time to start a company hiring people and ever. Actually turned out really, really well a few months later when everything started to boom on the STR side. And you guys know the history of that. And so that's when we launched the business and we had to rehire all the people that got laid off and the big reshuffle happened. We were able to leverage personality testing to do that. And so what we do today is a company needs a person in a seat, right? And so they reach out to us. We address that initial challenge, whatever that is. Could be a VA, could be a CEO, could be a general manager, an ops manager, a housekeeping manager. Might be the first hire that company ever makes. And then from there, we go into talent strategy, and that's looking at the business model, the business plan. Most people have a projection and they have a business plan. They rarely have a people plan to go along with that. And so we develop out that, what does that look like that aligns with the objectives of the company? And frankly, I never did either. I always just kind of had my business plan and my projection. And then I thought kind of about what the people would look like. And I might have alluded to that in the business plan, but I didn't have a specific business plan on the people side. So that's part of what we do as well.
Okay. So do you actually help facilitate the hiring process? So say I needed a operations manager. Do you help go headhunt that person, or is it more like taking a deep dive look into my business? I've got 10 employees. Is everybody in the right seat? Or is it that kind of thing? I'm just trying to get a better grasp of, like, you explained it very well, just what like the actual problem
Sure.
you'll solve, or both.
Yeah. Or how it works. So essentially, we do both. We do both of those things. The first thing we do, though, generally, if somebody reaches out and they say, "Hey, I need a person," well, what kind of person do you need? Might push back on that. We're very direct to say, "Hey, what about this or what about that?" Given our experience in the space. But if they have a specific need, let's say it's an operations manager, we take the job description that they have. It might even be just bullet points of what they want that person to do. We craft that into a high performing job ad. We then put that back in front of the client. We set a personality target for the type of person that will be ideal for that role. So they're like, I need somebody that is assertive, can lead and hold people accountable. They can handle a lot of variation in a given workday, and they have good, strong follow through and detail orientation. And they're somewhat social. Okay, we're going to set the job target for that. We're going to filter all the applicants that come in down to the ones you want to look at based on their personality, which is a better predictor than their resume. We also look at the resume. So we look at those two things. For high level roles, we also do cognitive testing to see how fast that person learns new things and adapts to change, right? So if there's a lot of change, if it's a fast growing company, we'll do that as well. We do all of the advertising. So we take that job ad that we've created, we push it out on all the channels, Indeed, which is the Airbnb of people, if you will, LinkedIn, and many other channels, including our own. We have a jobs board that goes out to our entire database once a week. We've aggregated a database of over 700,000 people in this industry that have some type of STR experience. So we have the largest database in existence of talent in this industry. And so we distribute out to that, bring in those candidates. We've built a hiring platform, which is a very easy to use software platform that the clients use to kind of take people through the hiring process. Inside of it, there's an interview builder where we build a specific interview for each role. So we have director of ops, housekeeper, maintenance tech, VA, whatever that is. That can be customized to the client's liking as far as if they have certain questions they like to ask. There's a rating system in there, and then there's also an integration with a checker for background checks. And so it's a super easy to use hiring platform. Most companies are just using Indeed right now. It's kind of like the difference between using an Airbnb and then actually having like a software PMS or whatever. We're the hiring PMS, if you will, with market knowledge. But we're not just the software. We're as much service as anything, because we look at the person with you. We'll look at the profiles. We do all the heavy lifting on helping you through the hiring process. We want the client, though, to interview the individuals because we want them to make the hiring decision. We just help with all the tools and the data to make good hiring decisions.
So when like say I wanted to hire you, you said it was like a monthly subscription, or is it like a one-time fee and a subscription, or how does that work?
There's two different models. There's a single hire model. So some people call us and they just want to hire one person, and we do all of that for a fixed fee. Most companies, if they're going to hire more than, say, 2 people in a given year, they're going to go on the subscription model. Our models are lower cost than any recruiter out there, meaning recruiters generally charge like 20, 30% of the salary. I knew that wouldn't work for our industry. I used to use them every once in a while and never liked it. So I say I don't like recruiters, and recruiters don't like me, because we really put together a very efficient cost structure model for our industry. So that's why we have to find our clients.
Yeah, because some of the VA industries are like taking like 40%.
We actually hire you VAs and you pay them directly. I won't take a cut of that. So we have our subscription fee, but you can hire unlimited virtual assistants through that, and you're directly paying them because I want them to get all the money. The BPOs, they have their place, and they theoretically bring some value on compliance and training and all that. But what I've found is if you pay somebody in the Philippines, $7, $8, $9 an hour, you're getting some high quality talent. And usually that's lower than you're paying the BPO. And so I like to see all the money go to the talent. So
yeah, it's a lot of, I mean, to them especially, that's a lot of money. So
yeah.
So what if like say like Austin was saying he wanted to hire operations manager, what if he wanted a local one? Can you do that too as well? It doesn't have to be just only remote people. You could find local talent as well.
We do all forms of talent. So full-time, part-time, independent contractors, consultants, virtual assistants, anything you need, whether it's local or remote. Local is actually more of our core focus. We do both. And if you went on our jobs board right now, there's probably 400 jobs, and 40% are remote and 60% are localized. And so we do everything from frontline workers, housekeepers, maintenance techs, inspectors, to middle management, like an ops manager, like you're talking about. Our most common are ops manager and general manager. Those are the two hardest to fill for people. And that's what we, kind of our expertise is in. We make it our job to know everybody that has those types of background experience. So.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, I think you make it pretty easy for people to find people. I think that's very challenging for most people, especially like when you're looking for your first hire or whatnot. You're not sure what to do. You're asking other people who've done it before what to do, but it's not necessarily like the best practice. I feel like you've spent, a career amount of time in this industry. So I feel like you're probably giving out pretty solid hires there, huh?
Well, I think that my experience as an operator helped tremendously, but I would say today, we do this at scale for so many companies. And even though I learned a lot as a 20-year operator, I've learned a lot more in the last 6 years helping companies at that scale, right? And so we get better at it every day. Kaizen is one of our core values here. We just get incrementally better every single day at helping companies find the best talent for a role. And I really enjoy that first conversation with an entrepreneur that's like, hey, I'm overwhelmed. I've got, 32 properties and I need my first hire or whatever that is. And I really enjoy that conversation of helping them figure out what they should hire for. So
Yeah, I think that's a good point there is like right at that, I don't know. I was for me it was way before 25 or 30 properties where I was like putting a VA in place, but like I've seen come across some operators that are at like, the 30 unit scale and they're still doing everything themselves. I'm like, holy shit, dude. Like you literally just created a second job for yourself, really. Like you have not built a business. You've just built a highly stressful uh second job. So yeah, that's when you come in, right?
yeah, and I mean, using 30 properties, usually it's maybe a husband and wife or two partners, or that even that is overwhelming, right? So I think it comes down to economics. What kind of margin are they producing? Properties is not a good indicator of that. Obviously, I much prefer to look at what their P&L looks like. Some of our clients will share their P&L, and I'll advise them based on that. On what the first hire should look like. Usually, when someone asks, though, we start talking about what they like to do in the business and what they don't like to do. Myself, for example, I was not a strong operator. I did not enjoy housekeeping, maintenance, inspections. I was really strong on business development, growing inventory, marketing. I became a digital marketer. We had a digital ad agency in house at one point, but operations was not my jam. So the thing that I needed to hire for first was that. Finance was another, right? I wasn't today. I probably could be a CFO of a company, and back then I didn't know what I was doing, and so I really needed strong financial fiscal acumen to be able to hire that. Sometimes that's full-time employees. Sometimes it's fractionals. So we work with a lot of the consultants, the fractionals in the space. Sometimes you can do it more efficiently that way. So unlike a typical recruiter, some people call us and we'll say, you know what, you don't need a full-time employee. You need a fractional. Here's a two or three to look at. So that's a part of our service as well.
So that my follow-up question or my next question was going to be for our listeners that are looking to make that first hire, second hire. My question was going to be who is the first person you hire? But the answer basically off you're saying is there is no definite answer. It depends on what seat you're sitting in. We take your specific skill set, keep you doing what you're good at and what fills up your cup, and we make the first hire based on really what you need in your business, not just saying, hey, I need to get a VA to eliminate guest communication, right? Like whatever. That may not be the right solution. Is that what you're saying?
There's some people out there, on socials that'll say, "Oh, your first hire should be this, an ops manager or whatever," and they're doing that based on their own experience. I look at the person. And sometimes they're the opposite of me. They're world class operators and they can't sell to save their life. And so they're not growing their inventory fast enough. So what they really need is somebody that's more adept from that perspective, right? And so I want to look at that human and go, what do you really love to do? What is the thing that gets you up in the morning, first of all? And what do you not like to do? And we'll start looking at it from that perspective and make sure because if we do that, we take away the pain points of owning the business and they actually own the business instead of it owning them and them having a job like you talked about earlier. That's going to enable them to scale to the point where they're not going to have to do any of the jobs, which is the ultimate goal, right? Is to become that visionary. We're a big believer in traction. I don't know if you're familiar with traction, the book and the EOS, where they talk about the visionary and the integrator. My goal with an entrepreneur is to get them to the point where they're actually in the visionary role, where they have an integrator and they have a team and a structure where that business is run for them and they're able to sit in the seat that they're ultimately designed for, which is visionary. So.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Heavily wired and aligned like what you were talking about yourself earlier. So there's some similarities there. One thing we recently tried to do, we're at about I think we're like 12 employees. And I tried I tried to bootstrap what you do before kind of really knowing you and what you do. And I was like, all right, so this is what I did. And it did provide some insight. Like it helped. But what I think is like it wouldn't scratch the surface of the problems that you actually solve. So it's like, I had them take the predictive index test and I tried to bootstrap it to like what you're basically the problem you're solving in house. And I tried to match, personality types with their roles and responsibilities. And really, it was more of not consultating, like really like betting the bank on this. It was more of just like, hey, would Claude, for example, be able to identify any gaps between roles and responsibilities and personality types? And it was relatively helpful. So like that was I mean, wouldn't maybe 20% of what you actually do, maybe less, but it did identify like maybe two or three key points where I was like, oh, I never even thought about it that way. Yeah, that person does kind of suck at this, but I see why they kind of suck at this. So we're able to move a few pieces around based on our structure. But then there's been other times way before I did that in our business where we had somebody we were like, we have to let this person go. We started thinking about it. We realized the whole time they were just doing something that was so out of place with how they were wired because they worked really hard. They were a great employee. We completely flipped them to something else. And I'm like, dude, now I'm at a point where I'm like, I will never get rid of that guy. Like that guy is so valued. He's doing like guest com related work, but really now he's doing revenue management related work. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think it brings back to the original point of like what you're saying is like it's so critical to have the right people in the right seats because things can just be so bad. I don't know. It was crazy, but that was my experience and trying to do DIY something in my business. But yeah, I don't think it was not that great, but it pointed out a few things.
I love that you were able to do that though, and we often will go into situations where somebody will say so and so is sucks. They're just bad at their job or whatever. We'll look at them, we'll profile them, and find exactly what you just found, and say, you know what, you're trying to make a cat be a dog. They're not a bad person. They're just not in the right seat. And so sometimes we don't have a seat. In that case, maybe you did, and that was great. Sometimes you don't. Now it's on you. Before you thought it was on them. You thought it was their fault. Actually, you just didn't hire the right person for the role because you didn't have the tools to be able to do it. And so now it's on you to decide what to do about it. You can continue to complain about them, leave them in place. You can try and train around it. And some people can have learned behaviors. If, for example, they're not detail oriented and don't have strong follow through, maybe they can have some digital babysitters that will offset that. But often, if it's a complete misfit from the role, it rarely works. And so, when I speak, I ask the crowd, how many of you have somebody on the team right now that you know you should probably fire or let go of? And about half of the room almost always raises their hand. And I always say to the other half, you're either lying or sitting next to that person. So, and they all laugh. And it's true. And it's because we don't like to fire people. It's the word. I hate it with a passion. I've been hiring people for 37 years. And when you hire somebody, you don't want to fire them, right? And so, but when you do need to, you need to do it. And I also say, hey, does anybody need to fire somebody right now and just needs help doing it? I'll meet with you tomorrow and let's go do it. And I had somebody take me up on that. We went on Zoom the next day and took care of business because it's just so hard. It's just something that no one wants to do. And so, but what I will tell you about people that are in the wrong seat is they already know it. They feel it. They know it. They're not happy either. When you actually do make that call, they end up in a better position almost 100% of the time. Your company ends up better, you feel better. So if you have somebody that's like that, either coach around it, try to make it work, but don't try so hard that you hurt the business doing it. Because I made that mistake and I will not do that again in my own businesses. So
Yeah, I think that people like they don't want to fire the people they need to fire, but they don't realize that by not doing it, it's hurting the other people they have that could be even greater, and that one person could be affecting everybody. So
often we'll find when we go and finally do a situation like that and take care of it, the rest of the people who they thought were going to get mad at them for firing that person because they were nice or whatever are all like, they finally did it. and it
Yeah.
literally changes the culture for the better. To your point, all of a sudden everything gets better and people are higher performers and they pick up the slack, all that good stuff. And so it's something, it's the lesson I learned from it is when you got to do it, you got to do it, and you just need
Yeah.
to do it. So
The
yeah,
coworkers know people should talk to their employees. They know what's going on. They know that Fred's not holding his weight and he's affecting everybody else negatively, and they have resentment toward Fred. Poor Fred. So when you're doing personality tests, what kind of personality tests are you using to collect your employees? Are you
yeah.
using DISC assessments or?
No, Austin mentioned predictive index, and that's the one that we use. There's 800 different
Yeah.
psychometric tests. Some are accurate, some are a joke. This particular one, there's 500 scientific validity studies done on it. The reason why I landed on it, ultimately, after doing many, many different ones, was not only is it really accurate, it's very fast. It takes about 5 minutes to complete. Looks like a 2-question survey. You actually select from 68 adjectives twice. So it's a very fast way to get to a lot of data. It's also been kind of just scientifically beaten to death until it's accurate over the last 70 years. The nomenclature they're used, meaning the adjectives you select from, are up to date to today's nomenclature, what people actually use for words. And it also is in 70 languages. So if you need, somebody wants to take it in their native language, they can feel comfortable with that. And so I love the accuracy. I love the speed. We have become exceptionally adept at figuring out and identifying the right profile for each role inside of an STR company. And so we know that piece of it well. Yes, Austin, you can ask Claude. Sometimes AI still gets things off a little bit and doesn't have quite the domain knowledge that we have in that regard, but it does help to even look at that for sure.
So let me say one thing on that, Steve. So like I actually left a little bit of part out of the story. So this is how even more bootstrapped it was. So it was like we had the predictive index test. We had an account through our CMO that allowed us to use their account to submit them, because I think these tests are very expensive to have an account with. If correct me if I'm wrong, like if you want to do the predictive index thing, it's pricey, right? Yeah.
It
So
is if you do it on a standalone, and so we do it as a part of our subscription to make it more efficient. So
yeah, so we were able to use them, and then they lost that account, stopped paying for it, whatever. So I had half of the team complete it, and then there was like the other half. I used a free disc test, so it wasn't even like, I know you're like, this is bush league, dude, but I just scraped together the resources that I could to make it happen. So like the VAs all did a disc test, leadership all did predictive index. So it's like it wasn't even speaking the same language. It did
right.
identify a few gaps, but the point I want to say is like, Claude, like you said, it can help. The free test can help maybe a little bit, but you're not going to get the results by like not partnering with somebody like yourself instead. That's like really deep into it.
Yeah, and first of all, you did better than most people do, which is nothing. Big companies do nothing, which I'm always blown away by. So some of it, we signed very large corporations that prior to that, all they were doing was looking at the resume and using gut instinct, which are terrible predictors, by the way. So congrats on at least, doing your version of it. So I wouldn't beat it up too much. Would we do it better? I think we would, obviously, just after doing it all these years. But the other piece of it is so often companies will profile the last 2 or 3 people that they look at. My view of it is do it right at the top of funnel. Every time somebody applies, you have them take the survey. I will not personally look at a resume or an application until I have the profile. I won't even consider it, because what if I do, I might fall in love with the resume. Oh yeah, they were an ops manager or GM or whatever. I don't care what you have on your resume as much as what makes you tick. That is a much stronger predictor, right? Are you aligned with the role? I can teach you to do anything, especially if you have the cognitive ability to do it, but I can't make you be what you're not if you're not the right fit. And so that's why we do it right at the beginning. To do that, we drive a lot of applicant flow also. So the other piece of what we do is get as many people into the mix as possible through a lot of different channels, sourcing of applicants, reaching out to people that are passive, because the more you get into the mix, the more apt you are to be able to get high quality individuals who have the right profile, maybe some of the background and experience you're looking for as well. So that's our ultimate goal, is to do all of the above. So
That's awesome. Yeah, if you Austin, if you had them take DISC assessments, then you had the other ones take the other assessment. It's vastly different. I've took a DISC assessment like a million times for work all the time, and it's just so long. And I'm like, and then like by question 37, I'm feeling like wishy-washy. Like, do I really feel that way, or do I not feel that way? Yeah, and I'm like, you're asking me too many questions. So,
DISC is a good instrument. It's actually not ideal for pre-hire selection, because if you think about it, you're not going to get every applicant to take a 20-30 minute DISC test every single time they apply for a job. And so they're Christmas treeing it at best. And so that's why that speed thing I mentioned is so important. So
yeah. So do you think that anybody who has a team in like, I guess maybe more than one employee per se in their business, that they should go and have them take personality tests, or you recommend it?
And first of all, they themselves, the most powerful thing for me in personality testing was self-awareness, understanding myself, right? And then, why am I like this? Why have I started 17 companies? Why do I have entrepreneurial ADHD? Why do I have 3 business ideas before breakfast? Well, I'm a big Six Sigma wide Maverick profile, and that is common with that type of profile. And then I understand what I am. Now I understand why, right? And I start to dig in and have self-awareness and start to build tools around some of the challenges that come with that. Everyone has challenges with their personality. The more you understand yourself, the better you can work with other people, the better you can sell homeowners on your program, the better you can communicate. All of those things get better. And so I always say that the number one reason to do personality testing is to understand yourself. The secondary reason is to work with everybody else and hire the right people. So that's kind of, my pitch. I did a training one time. I was up in the Outer Banks of North Carolina with this big company, and this guy, he was 77 years old. I'll never forget it. It was a 2-day workshop. We get done. He walks up to me and he goes, "Steve, I've learned more about myself in the last 2 days than the last 77 years. And I was like, wow, self-awareness is a never-ending study of oneself. And so that's, once we have that baseline too, I can really work with that entrepreneur to kind of help them build out their team as well. So to answer a long answer to a short question, but yeah, absolutely, everybody should do it.
Yeah. One thing I see, like I think you kind of alluded to it with operators, is they're under this impression, like let's say they get to 15, 20 listings, like I need to get a VA, right? Like that's great. That's a great mindset. Like low pay, easy leverage to start getting some of the lower dollar tasks, off of your plate. And I think one thing that I've learned through this, an experience that I've had, is that it's like the conception like people have going into it is like, I need somebody with Airbnb experience previously. And to me, like based on what you're saying, I agree. Is like that almost is irrelevant. Like you need to figure out what you actually need, and you need to find the personality type that aligns with that, and you can train for the skill set. Versus saying somebody has Airbnb experience, like that's kind of alluding to what you're saying about, well, that's basically just hiring based on a resume, right?
So if I had somebody that had 5 years of Airbnb experience, okay, and they really knew their stuff, but they had the wrong personality profile for the role. They're maverick like me, and they're not going to be detail oriented or whatever. And then I had somebody that had the absolute perfect profile for the role and 0 experience. I'm going to hire the person with the right profile over the resume. Now, is that the best? No, the best is both. Meaning, yeah, I don't want to discount people's experience. I have 30 years experience in the space. It's valuable. Okay. Don't want to say that's not valuable. Certainly, if somebody has 5 years of experience and they really understand OTAs and distribution and what a PMS is and all these things that they're going to have to learn, but then they also have the right profile, that's the perfect scenario, right? And so if I only get one or the other, I'm leaning towards personality, but my ideal scenario is I want both. And that's why we've been aggregating, talent for 6.5 years almost. We have 700,000 people in our database. We are getting ready to launch something called VR Pro. And VR Pro is a profile that you can have like a LinkedIn profile, but it highlights all of their experience, if they have a certification, if they know Hospitable or whatever software platform they know how to use, Breezeway, et cetera, they're able to highlight those things, because I want to be able to not only find that guardian profile and PI that I'm looking for, but I also want that person that understands revenue management, because that's what I'm hiring for. And so, to answer your question, both is best. So.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I completely agree. I like that. What I would say, I think this is my last question I want to ask, is like, for our listeners that maybe they're running a boutique operation, or that, they're vacation rental managers. Let's say they're not at a place in their business where it makes sense fully to partner with you, or maybe they just want to try and figure it out themselves. Do you have any, maybe low hanging fruit or tips or advice, maybe just one thing that they could take away of like, hey, if I could do one thing today with my employees or staff, or whether I'm making this hire, any kind of tip or advice that maybe could save them along the way that you would recommend them look at or do?
So I'll often meet with somebody. They're a one person show, or they have one VA or whatever, and they'll ask me, what should I start with? So let's build an org chart. And they're like, an org chart? Why the heck would I build an org chart? I don't have an organization. I'm like, well, are you doing reservations processing? Yeah. Are you doing guest communications? Uh-huh. Are you doing marketing? Mm-hmm. Are you doing housekeeping, maintenance? Are you doing finance? Are you doing inspections? Are you owner relations? What? They're like, yeah. I'm like, well, you have an organization. You have an organizational chart, and your name is on every one of those boxes. Let's build it out, and then let's take your name off the ones that you like doing the least first, and let's build the organization around that. And so that's what I tell everybody to do: build your org chart. And everybody looks at me sideways, and then they go and do it, and they go, "That was a really good exercise." So,
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. Like, we have an org chart, but we just have an org chart based on the seats that we've already filled, but we don't have like, Austin still might be doing 7 different things. He's not doing 35 like he did when he started, but he's doing 7. But I need to make those into my name.
make it,
Yeah.
build it all the way out. Exactly. Put your name on everyone you're doing. And so, like, at Better Talent, when I was still doing full-time sales, I was a CEO, but I was a sales guy working for the COO, right? And so I actually think of it like that. So if my name is down below on one of those things still, if there's an ops manager, I actually report to that person for that role. And all of a sudden I go, man, I don't want that job anymore, right? And so that helps you to think along the lines that you're trying to get fired from everything as the owner of the business, ultimately, right? So
Yeah,
just a
no, that makes
great exercise. And also my advice is to build it as what we call a people stack. And so you have a tech stack, and you put all the technology platforms you use. A people stack is full-time, part-time, independent contractors, consultants, virtual assistants, anything, consultants, whatever you use. So Better Talent sits on people stacks that we build, because we're their talent acquisition and optimization team member, if you will. So we sit on the bench. So even if it's not a full-time employee, even if it's a consultant, you should list it on that stack of people. If I look at any scaled vacation rental, short-term rental operation at all, even some of the bigger co-host companies, if I look at their P&L, and I've looked at 1,500 P&Ls in this space, people side of that business is between 40 and 60% of the cost structure every single time. We spend all this time thinking about marketing and distribution and technology and all this other stuff. The most expensive part of all this is people. So that I just tell people, let's optimize for that.
It's probably the most beneficial part too, for
Yeah.
the right people.
Yeah. If you get the right ones, the ROI is amazing. If you have the wrong ones, it goes the other direction, right? So,
Yeah. This is totally awesome. Steve, I thank you for your 30 years of experience and everything that you do. We definitely have to have you back to even just talking the nuts and bolts about managing vacation rentals and everything else you've done. I feel like you have so much value. And it's very rare to get somebody who's been in the space as long as you to actually come on a podcast and do the dang thing. So,
happy to.
We totally appreciate it. You want to tell everybody where they can find you and all, and your website and all those things, and we'll wrap it up.
Absolutely. So if you're on LinkedIn, please find me on LinkedIn, Steve Trover. Connect there. Email address is steve@bettertalent.com. The website obviously is bettertalent.com. You can book a demo on there. And by the way, I'm on a lot of those demos with our team. And we kind of spend a half an hour kind of learning about your business and then showing you how we operate. So we'd have to do that there. I always tell everybody that does the demo, if you don't work with us, you'll learn something anyways. So it's worth a half an hour to spend. So
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate it, and Austin appreciates it. I hope everybody got value from this. And if you guys are looking for an employee, go check out Steve over there at Better Talent. And yeah, with that, I'll let Austin
thanks,
let
guys.
it go.
All right. Thank you all for listening. Peace.